Well, you join me here at Reading and District Angling's Junction 12 venue, just off the M4. I left home this morning fairly early. It's a familiar old journey for me, having spent many years fishing in this Berkshire area. What's not familiar to me is the lake. I've only ever been here once, and that was high summer. It's now end of April, and you're joining me here for, we've got a couple of nights ahead of us for a spring session. I'm hopefully gonna sort of talk you through all my generalised spring tactics, all the sort of methods that I use, rigs, baiting strategies, that type of thing. There's a lot of nice fish in this lake, there's some big uns. When we run through the spring tactics, I'm going to sort of try and give you how I fish many different types of lake. Obviously this one is a bookable lake. There's not many other anglers here this trip, so hopefully we'll get to be able to move about a little bit. But for the purposes of this morning, I turned up here at first light, as I always like to do, and I've actually seen a few fish from this swim. Now, I purposely turned up onto a point swim right smack bang in the middle of the lake. That gave me a great opportunity to view both ends. It meant that I could have a look at the whole sort of panorama of the lake and not really miss anything. Well, I've seen some fish out in the open bowl area, so I'm going to get some rods out on that zone. Probably scatter a little bit of bait around for the day. I've been told there's a lot of day bites on this lake, so I really want to crack on and get fishing now. We're going to sort of, let's see what actually happens. We'll make the decisions of what to do as we move through the trip. But for the moment, I'm going to get the rods out, get a little bit of bait out there and just see if we can't nick a quick bite. It's nice out there, man. That's it, the weed. What did I get there? About a good half a rod length pull before I hit the weed. See what we bring in on the lead. There you go. Fresh. That's exactly what we're looking for. Nice crisp drop, short pull, then locking up against the weed. Let's go slightly to the left. We don't want to lead around too much here because I have seen fish, but there's no point. They haven't been showing for an hour, so we might as well get it bang on right. It's a bit shallower to the left. It's glassy out there. There's a little tiny bit of gravel, probably just over a rod length. And there's the weed. That's locked up, so that's probably a little bit clearer there before I get to the weed. A little band of weed and then clears up again, so let's see what we got on the end. Yeah, there's much shorter weed there. I don't think we've brought in anything. It's clean, one little strand. That's cleaner on the left, slightly shallower. Let's go slightly right. You can see now on the right hand side of the swim, look at the amount of resistance on the rod tip. So pretty much that is in the weed. I'm pulling through the weed there, but a lot of resistance. Look, really, really troddy out there. Probably a lot of new growth, we'll see. I'll reel that in now, see what we've got on the end of the lead. Dead old rotten stuff from last year, crispy. Don't really want to be presenting around that. There's no life in it at all. So that's about as far right as I want to go in the swim. I'm going to start tracking the lead back slightly left, see where I get that nice crisp drop again. Right, I've had a good lead about and found a really nice area out there. It's a bit of a drop off, shallower to the left hand side, drops away slightly deeper to the right. There's a nice little band of weed about just under a rod length pull away from where I've sort of leaded up. Then to the right of the spot, it's all dead weed. I don't want to go anywhere near that. I've pulled some in, there's no life in it. So I'm going to concentrate on what's like quite a nice firm, sandy, maybe a bit of silt in there. It's lovely and clean and getting a good crisp drop. Probably 6-7 foot on the left hand side, maybe dropping into 8s on the right. Great for spring fishing really, and especially with the weather, it's not great. Got a cold northeasterly wind. I've seen them out in the middle of the pond. Sort of not exactly what I was going to be doing on here. I would have been getting around the pond, looking in all the edges, around the reed beds. The weather isn't dictating that that's going to be the one this trip. Maybe changeable tomorrow, we'll see, but for right now, it's all about out in the pond, getting it out there on some spots, getting a little bit of bait scattered around there. I'm going to get on with that now and let's see what the afternoon brings, hopefully a bite. That is a bite. It's a sick spot, that one. If I had to put percentages on it, I'd say 80% of my spring angling's done with boilies. Springtime is just perfect for that style of fishing, and I'll be using either a throwing stick or a catapult to bait up. It allows me to move around the lake really freely and easily. It allows me to dictate the exact sort of level of baiting that I'm going to be using. So I like a nice wide spread. I want those fish grazing, and I can pick and choose what I want to fish over the top. You know, a lot of the time it would be a bright hook bait. For me, springtime is a great time of year for getting those boilies out in the lake and catching those browsing carp. Well, the sun came out, still got that lovely cool breeze pushing into the margins of the swim, but out there on the slightly deeper water, we've just had a bite and we got one on. So the tactics have definitely paid off this morning. Softly approach, bright bright one out there with a little scatter and a bait with a throwing stick. Let's be having ya. Well, there we go. First one of our spring session down at Junction 12, RDAA. Fantastic venue, it's produced the goods already. So we went gently this morning, cast the hook baits out, just a small spread of boilies with the throwing stick. I'd seen fish there this morning and it's paid off. Late afternoon bite, absolute melter, fish fought like a tiger. And there we go. Beautiful winter colours. Coming into spring, we're now in April. Fish have woken up, they're well on the way to their annual ritual. And it was lovely to get this one come visiting us. Very welcome. Hopefully, one of more to come. Let's have a look at the other side. There you go, there's the other side. Lovely old carp. So, plan going into the evening then. I'm going to get these rods back out, but I'm going to put them back out on food baits for the night. Take the bright ones off. Probably put another, you know, maybe 100 baits around each rod scattered out there. Just give them something to browse over. Hopefully get something in that morning feeding period. So it's just softly. Real sort of classic spring tactics for me. Not going in too heavy, just trying to get a bite at a time. These fish are very mobile at this time of year. They can come and go with the wind, so that's how we're approaching it. But for now, we're going to get this one back. Hopefully we get another visitor sometime in the morning. He's lovely, isn't he? Super. Well, would you believe it? Just slipped that one back, turned around to put the sling back on the mat, and we're away on the left-hand rod, which was the one, if you remember, that we put on the shallower mark out there. So that's really good. We got two spots going, one on the shallow, one on the drop-off. We've had a little change of fortune in the wind as well, if you can notice. It's gone from a northeasterly to a northwesterly, which is now blowing completely in our favour. Might have done us a real good turn, that. coming in rapid. Don't feel like a big one, to be fair, but got a bit of water for Uncle Ozzy. Hey, and the sun is shining. Springtime carp fishing at its best. That's a big chunky one, that one. Well, there we go. 34.8, big plump female. The typical mirror of this strain in the lake. Really chunky, big old bulldog head on her. Magnificent. A proper old plodder. Let's have a look at the other side. Got one or two little leeches on her. They've already been sitting in the weed all winter, growing eggs. And there she is. Big old chunky springtime mirror. Well pleased with that one. Okay, let's get her back. A little bit to the right, but I'm happy with that. You see it go down? They're quite close, them two rods, but it don't matter. Those rods went out really sweet this evening. Lake just flattened off perfectly. Cloud bank came over, baited up. Really couldn't have hoped for anything better this evening, to be fair. Yeah, just wait and see. I mean, tomorrow morning's bite time. The lake's well renowned for those sort of early morning daytime bites. So yeah, we're waiting anticipation. But in the meantime, we're gonna have a nice beer and enjoy the evening, soak up the atmosphere, and yeah, look forward to that first light period tomorrow. I really can't think of a more exciting time to be out on the lake carp fishing than the spring. Everything is waking up. You've had the long, cold, dark days of winter. We're moving out of that phase into the vibrant, perfect, beautiful time of spring. Everything's waking up. The trees, the leaves, the whole of nature is coming to life, and so are the carp. They're getting active. You can chase them around the lakes. They're looking for the sun. They're in the reed beds. They're on the shallows. They're on the new weed growth. They're big. They're fresh. They're a little bit clumsy. If you can get on them in the spring, they can be that little bit easier to catch than other times of the year. They're sort of coming out of their winter slumber like an old bear. They're getting up, scratching about, and they're looking for the sun. They're looking for that warmth. And spring is just that time. Every day's different and changeable. The weather's changeable. You can go from dark brooding clouds and light rain to bright sunshine and misty mornings. You get it all in the spring and all in one day. It's an incredibly vibrant and exciting time to be out on the bank. And the lakes can be a little bit busy, but everyone wants the same thing. Springtime carp angling is very, very special. Well, nice result. Mist cleared this morning, sun's come out, but with a nice light ripple on the water. Seems to have extended that bite time a little bit. And we finally got one. A slow old plodder. staying deep. I must admit I was almost starting to lose a little bit of hope with the brightness of this sun, but that's the rod that's fished in the slightly deeper water at the base of the drop off, so that's a nice little result. So I was thinking they might be about to pop up on the surface, start going around the margins, but there you go, they're out there feeding. We did see one show over that rod about maybe half an hour ago, 3/4 an hour ago, something like that. Whoa. Come on, mate. Don't like the net. Well, that one to do nicely for the first one in the morning. Happy days. Well, looks like we've got one of the little stockies that they've put in the lake over the last year or two. Fancied a little bit of a munch on the old krill this morning. Probably only a few weeks away from spawning now, I would imagine. And she's absolutely full up. Mint condition, of course. Well, there we go. One of the lovely Junction 12 stockfish. First one of the morning. And I think my plan now is I'm pretty much going to stay put. There's a few fish out there, I've seen a few, and there's actually a couple of other anglers turned up on the other bank, so makes life a little bit more tricky for mooching about and stalking. So, you know, the weather's not ideal. It's a little bit earlier in the year for the margins. On this lake particularly, the weed growth hasn't quite got there yet, so seems like the fish are nice and happy out in the pond. We're going to hedge our bets, fish out on those spots, see if we can't get a couple of afternoon bites. But yeah, this one's a welcome one for this morning in the beautiful spring sunshine. April, what an amazing month to be out carp angling. Right, so we've just had that fish. That was on the old food bait that was out there overnight. So I'm going to take this opportunity now to wrap the rod back up. I'm going to take the food bait off. I'm going to put a bright one on because obviously it's, you know, middle of the day now. It's bright sunshine. I'm going to fish it on that slightly shallower spot. Nice bright orange hook bait, perfect for the spring. Just going to fish it probably slightly off the baited area. See if we can't nick a bite on that one and just you know, ring the changes a little bit. So let's get that done now. Well, I mean, basically, the fluoro you're relying on to some degree on the sight value of the hook bait, and obviously in the spring, fish are swimming around a lot, moving about the lake a lot, and quite often when they're not feeding quite so heavily and just grazing and what have you, they're using sight as a good aid to finding various items of food. Not only that, obviously it just captures their attention quite quickly in the clear water from a distance, Whereas obviously at night you're relying a lot more on the smell and the food signal of the bait. And if you know, if I fish singles during the day on certain areas, quite often at night I will fish over a little bit of bait just to encourage that feed-in scenario from the food signal and the smell and what have you of an area. So yeah, quite often I will switch and change between the two, just depending on circumstance really. I mean, if these rods, one of these rods hadn't have gone off today, I quite possibly by this afternoon would have switched over and put the fluoros on just for that afternoon period, just to see if it wouldn't nick a bite. You know, sometimes in the spring it is all about chopping and changing your tactics and adapting to the changing weather scenario and the way the fish are reacting, you know. Obviously if I see them up on the surface now and I had the opportunity, it's the perfect scenario to put a zig out there. Fact is, you can't use zigs on this venue, so that's not in our repertoire this trip. But yeah, I mean, you know, edge fishing, out in the pond fishing, it all just depends on the spot, the clarity of the water, the number of fish in the lake, so many factors, and you just sort of adapt as you go along by what you see. Spring fishing is about adaptability, more so than probably any other time of the year. Go. Well, here we are, mid-afternoon. This rod's been out there since, well, 24 hours. One of the old food baits. And with a strengthening wind blowing into our favour, that rod's ripped off. We've actually just watched two fish show slightly out of our water in amongst the birds, and he showed twice, so they're on the move. But this is a right result, a little bit earlier than yesterday afternoon. I'll concentrate here a little bit because this one's kiting savagely right. And I've got a big tree-lined margin down here with a big overhang. So just got to be a bit careful here. Hopefully he's turning. Going for that overhang. Right under them branches now. I think I've got him out. Yep. Whew, that was a bit hairy. Another little one, I think. Might just come around here and net him, if I'm honest. Probably easiest. Common, isn't it? First common of the trip. Only a little fella. That's right. Right. So I'm going to get this rod wrapped back up and take that old hook bait off. I'm going to put a bright one out for the rest of the day and we'll see how it goes from there. But I mean that bait had been out there since about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon and it's now 3 o'clock, so best part of 24 hours. But that shows you the amount of bird life on the lake. The old mesh cork balls really do come into their own, and as you can see, that was super soft, super attractive, but bird proof. Let's get a bright one on, see what the afternoon brings. That's the bobby. Well, there we go, the first common of the trip, mid-afternoon bite, full sun, and he fizzed off with one of those corkball hook baits that we put out yesterday evening. Been out there all night and all day, but he was hungry. Lovely common, only a small one but very welcome. Pretty cool little customer. It's got a little bald patch on his side. Nice to see a common after the mirrors. Let's have a look at the other side. Right, so we just slipped that fish back. So I think it's probably the perfect time to talk you through the tactics I've been using on this session and my sort of go-to favourite springtime tactics per se. So to start with, the rig, we've gone through these sort of rigs, the type of rigs that I love to use many times. This is a straightforward hinge rig for fishing pop-up baits. I'm tying it with the Tintlink fluorocarbon as a boom, with a little loop at both ends. Top end's tied to the loops attached to a quick change swivel. Moving down to another loop, I like to use a straightforward swivel on there. I cut the ring off because I'm attaching it to a loop. And then to the other end of the swivel, I'll just tie a doubled over length of recoil, turning it into another loop, which I then use as a multi-rig for quick attachment of my hook. Now that's perfect for sort of springtime fishing. You know, it can be fast and furious. You can go through periods where nothing's happening, but then it all kicks off. So to be able to change that hook really quickly is a great advantage to get yourself back fishing. You want to maximise your time in the spring. So for me, that's perfect. Preparation is key to success in a lot of these situations. So I'll have a load of hooks made up, or sharpened up. I like to hand sharpen some of my hooks. They're all ready to go. So as soon as I've caught a fish, I can unhook it, slide the hook off the loop, a new one on, fresh hook bait, and I'm back out there fishing. So that's the rig covered. One of the most important things in my angling, I feel, is my ability to use a helicopter style leader system. Now, last year I was fishing the syndicate water that had a lead core ban, but they did allow these lead free leaders. Now fortunately, TA had a big sample batch of a lead free leader which I got to use and trial last year. Really successful, got a lot of bites using it. So it's going to be called Subfleck. It's due for release early this summer. So I've been using it now for well over a year. Splices beautifully. It's incredibly supple, as you can see. Takes up the contours of the bottom beautifully. Absorbs water and becomes very, very heavy. For the type of fishing that I do in the spring, which is really reactive fishing, you can be finding these carp at almost any point around the lake at any time of the day, and to be able to move onto them and cast subtle, small leads, really subtle rigs onto shows quickly by being able to move that bead up the leader, I can sort of confidently feel that I'm going to be fishing pretty effectively under most circumstances with this style of leader and rig, unless it's going into really heavy weed, which is unusual at that time of year. I know by pulling that bead up, 4, 6, 8 inches up the leader, not really too fussed. If I'm getting really soft drops, I might skip it in and just move that bead up a little bit further. If I know the swim and there's good firm sandy spots or gravel, I just move the bead back down, giving myself a nice inch or two of play. And I find personally that being able to move around the lake, cast at shows, definitely gets me more bites in the spring. And these fish are so mobile. 1 minute they're in that corner, and as the sun tracks around the lake, they're moving, they're in another margin or over a plateau at 50 yards, let's say, and you can just move on them, flick a couple of rigs out there and be in with a good chance of a quick bite. Especially with these sort of rigs, fishing a bright hook bait in the spring during the day, really effective. It's proved very effective on here. And as I said earlier, during the evening, I changed them over to the food bait corkball pop-ups to match what I was feeding, and that's produced a couple of bites today as well. So hopefully, you'll see from the results that we've had that these simple spring tactics can be effective whatever lake you're fishing. So we're here on the final morning. Another real cold one last night. You know, here we are, look, togged up in our winter gear, and yeah, it's been freezing. A real brisk northeasterly blowing all night. You know, we've had frost on the mats in the morning, 2 degrees, and then we've had those lovely little periods of sunshine, those little breaks in the afternoons where we've been sat around in a t-shirt, sneaking up and down the margins, looking for fish in the edge. But to be perfectly honest, this isn't, or certainly hasn't been, your stereotypical spring trip, if I'm honest. You know, the weather has been against us, you know, really cold winds, high pressure, low temperatures, very little sun. So it hasn't been one of those trips where I've been scooting around the lake looking for shows, looking for opportunities in the edge. We have looked for those, but the windows have been very short and have shut. Basically, the curtain's been shut on them before we've even got going. So it really, this session all hinged on that first morning when I got here at first light. The lake was empty and I saw those first shows out in the pond, and we sort of set everything up on that first morning. Got the couple of bites in the afternoon, if you remember, and then just took everything gently, you know, baiting up with the throwing stick, a nice spread of bait out over that sandy zone with the drop off, right just over the back of that low-lying weed. You know, a classic spring area, some shallow water dropping into the deeper water. The lovely thing is, for me, for sure, is that we've had bites off all 3 rods. So, and we almost called it a couple of times, you know, when that pressure rose and we had that little bit of warmer weather, it was the shallow rod that fired off, and the early bites in the cooler weather at the start came off the deeper side. So in terms of that, you know, we covered every sort of, we covered every option, and you know, like I say, one of the most important things, just in one show out there actually, the biggest thing I hope you can take out of this is adaptability. Keep your eyes peeled, get around the lake, react to shows, react to the weather, and, you know, look for the sun, look for those periods where the fish are going to bubble up to the top, move to the areas of warmth, react to the wind. The water's warming all the time, and the surface layers of the water are going to warm up quickest in the spring. So a brand new wind is pushing warm water to the windward edge. Spring's a good time to be moving on winds. So there we go. We covered a lot of tactics, techniques, how I approach my spring fishing. It's generally softly, and you know, I'm prepared to up and move at any point if I feel it's necessary. So yeah. I'm going to see out the bite time in here. Hopefully might get one. There is a few about. If not, you know, I've had a great session. We've caught, you know, 2 fish on both the days we've been here, and we've seen a lot of activity going on this morning, which means that, you know, we might get a last chance saloon bite. But if not, I hope you've enjoyed the film.